Welcome back to BLOCKTV. This is Crypto Crunch, and we're joined from Helsinki by finance magnate Rachel Mcintosh, and who we've asked to highlight some of her top stories from the week. And kicking us off this week, we have, of course, the unending story of Craig Wright, the saga, if you would. Rachel, what's your take on the latest news that's happened here?
Yeah, unending is a good word, but I'm hoping that this will probably be at least a temporary suspension in all the things that have been going on. So it looks like the lawsuit that the Kleiman estate brought against Craig Wright over some, Bitcoins that used to belong to Craig Wright's former business partner is not looking good for Craig Wright. So it looks like he's going to have to turn over 50% of the Bitcoins that he owns to the Kleiman estate. So basically what happened there is Craig Wright's former business partner passed away a few years ago, and his brother basically accused Wright of having falsified documents, contracts saying that his deceased brother passed his Bitcoins onto Wright, when really it seems like that might have not been the case. It seems like these documents actually were falsified, and that's what the judge has ruled.
But isn't there, a sort of a twist element in this by saying that Craig Wright is required to pay this amount? Doesn't that in some way validate or seemingly validate, or can be spun to validate in Craig Wright's terms, the claims that he is Satoshi Nakamoto and that he has the rights to this fortune? Isn't there that sort of angle and narrative which Craig Wright is now trying to spin?
That is definitely on the table here, and there is really no doubt that they were business partners, Kleiman and Wright, at some point in the past, and that they were both involved in the community that created Bitcoin. That Bitcoin was, the community that fostered the early growth of Bitcoin. So, undoubtedly, both of them were a part of this movement from the start. Does that mean that Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto? Not necessarily. But, it points to the fact that, as much as we love to hate Craig Wright, maybe, he isn't a total, spinning all of this out of nothing. He has been involved in this movement for a long time. But again, that doesn't mean that he's Satoshi.
Rachel throwing a bone to Craig Wright there. That's the first. People love to just hate on him wholesale, but yes, as you say, he was an early founder. But now, as well, before he goes and just starts handing out billions of dollars to various estates, there is still opportunity for appeal, correct?
That's correct, yes. So he can, this particular case is closed, but he can appeal this lawsuit, and it's not yet clear if he will choose to do that. It seems at this point that he said the other day, it's not that big of a deal that I'd have to pay 50% of my Bitcoins. Like in the past, it would have been that I had 80% and that my former business partner's estate had 20%. Now it's 50%, but he stated that 40% of that will go to estate taxes in Florida, where the Kleiman family is based. So, how much of this money are they actually going to see remains to be seen.
A billion here, a billion there. What's a few billions?
A few billion.
Exactly. When you're sitting on a $10 billion fortune, apparently, who cares if a few billions make their way in one place or another? All right, but now moving on to the next story this week, in a bit of a twist case. Despite Veritasium continuing to have a lot of issues with frozen assets, the founder having a lot of problems with the SEC, somehow the price has gone up.
Yeah, Asher, I love this story. This is so interesting. Veritasium, if anything, I personally am surprised that it took the SEC this long to crack down on Veritasium. In the early days, when crypto was starting, maybe not in the early days, but when crypto was starting to get really popular in 2016 and 2017, which is when Veritasium came onto the scene, if you looked at the white paper, the original white paper, when it came to the technical side of things, it said how did we build this? And then it just said secret sauce, not telling. And I'm not kidding. Look this up.
That's real Wild West stuff. Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, now the SEC is finally taking action against Reggie Middleton, who's the creator of this cryptocurrency, and his companies that have also fostered the growth of Veritasium. But so basically what they've done is accused him of lying to investors about, the demand for Veritasium, and also of market manipulation on unregistered exchanges to prop up the price of Veritasium. And although $8 million of the $15 million that were raised to the project have been frozen, this price is still rallying. So I don't want to get too conspiratorial here, but I think that there's a possibility that some of the holders of this cryptocurrency could be, have been persuaded to trade this and drive up the price in order to boost the public image of Veritasium, despite the fact that our founder has been, targeted by the SEC. Like, the community is so strong, and here we go, like, Veritasium is stronger than ever, even though it's really not.
Yeah, they'll rally around. But I mean, perhaps maybe this is all more innocent. Maybe is this simply a case of supply and demand? You slice away a whole bunch of the supply. You cut, by limiting and freezing some of the assets, you cut a whole bunch of the supply, and therefore the relative demand goes up. Is this just basic economics playing out here to see that sort of rise, or do you think that's more manipulative?
That is definitely possible, but given the fact that Veritasium has tanked so severely, back in January of 2018, we had a value of around $474 per token. And then earlier in the month of August, we hit the lowest that it has been in a very long time, $4.67. Yeah.
That's a steep fall.
There is a possibility. Yeah, I know, exactly. It's crazy. But it's possible that there could be supply and demand, but there just hasn't been really any demand for Veritasium in a long time. It's possible that the media buzz around this case could have caused, some people to suddenly become interested in Veritasium. But again, when we've seen assets that have been targeted by the SEC in the past or really involved in any kind of regulatory or legal battle, it usually has a negative effect on the price of the cryptocurrency. So that is possible, but I think it's unlikely in this case.
So perhaps we might be seeing what a lot of my favorite analysts like to call a dead cat bounce, where we get a little bump up. Before.
I love that term, yeah.
Please feel free to use it. When I heard it, I fell in love. I take no credit for it, but it's a good, fun one, and that might be what we're seeing here, because that price drop, I can't imagine a recovery coming anytime soon, but we've been proven wrong before. Regardless, let's move on to the next subject we have today, which is, of course, China. People's Bank of China has been talking about their readiness to launch this central bank digital currency of their own, and now they're highlighting a few big players in the Chinese market to take the sort of first action on it. What can you tell us?
Right, exactly. So ever since Libra was, the Libra white paper came out and Facebook said we're pushing to launch this by early 2020, although they have since sort of, gotten a little bit cold feet on that situation. China has said, okay, this central bank digital currency project that we've been working on for the past several years, kind of in the background, needs to happen very quickly because there's soon going to be competitors in the space. If it's not going to be Libra, then it's going to be somebody else. So basically, China is pushing the creation of this digital currency, and they said that they might launch it as soon as November 11th. And the first batch, if you will, of institutions that are going to have access to this are 4 banks: the China Construction Bank, the Industrial Commercial Bank of China, the Bank of China, the Agricultural Bank of China, and one banking association called UnionPay, as well as these 2 tech giants, Alibaba and Tencent. And those institutions will be responsible for distributing this digital currency to citizens and users of the stores and institutions that they are in charge of.
But now, I suppose we need to be clear here. When China is talking about a digital currency, even a sovereign digital currency, they're not really talking about a cryptocurrency in the sense we traditionally know them to be. I mean, even in their original statements, which were light on details, they did state that there'd be a 2-tier system with the People's Bank of China on top, still pulling the levers, and the commercial banks underneath. This isn't really the sort of enlightened Libra-style sort of process that people would say would be a direct competitor to what's happening in the West, correct?
That's correct. There aren't also so many details yet about exactly how this is going to work. We know that it's going to be basically a digital yuan, the China national currency already. But I think what's really interesting about this is that The Chinese government, the People's Bank of China, is also looking to circulate this possibly to U.S. buyers. And if there's a country with a digital currency that starts to being used in international markets, I think there's serious potential to use that digital currency to leverage that to boost the economy of that particular country, particularly if there are incentives for other countries and other foreign entities that to use this particular currency. It's sort of a currency war, but with cryptocurrency in this case.
So you think this could give China the sort of first mover advantage when it comes to sort of digital distribution of wealth? Maybe this could become a new medium of exchange, of international trade and exchange, just by the simplicity of its use, potentially? Is that what you're sort of implying there?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, of course, this is just speculative at this point. Sure. But for example, if let's say there's a company selling oil or something from China that says, if you buy this in our national digital currency, you'll receive, a 5% discount or whatever. So that incentivizes that other country to buy into that national digital currency in order to get that asset, and thus, strengthening this layer of the Chinese economy, this new emerging layer. And what the long-term implications of that will be, I can't say, but I think that that's definitely, something that we should be paying attention to as this currency is launched over the next couple of years.
Certainly a very important element to focus on, particularly at a time when we are seeing the sort of currency wars playing out. We're seeing the Trump administration seek to devalue the US dollar. It might be a chance for China to step in and take some of that market for international trade. A very interesting point to raise and something to watch closely. Rachel Mcintosh from Finance Magnates, I want to thank you so much for bringing us this interesting news and analysis. Important stuff to have, to be sure. And stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news and information. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.